What's going on, guys? National Master James Canty III here with Chess.com, and today we have game of the day. With the white pieces, we have Komodo, and with the black pieces, we have Winter. Let's get right into it, guys. These engines always have some very good games. So here we go, d4, d5, and we have c4 with a Queen's Gambit decline here. Very simple, guys. Queen's Gambit decline. It's been played for forever. It's not going out of style here. And then we have bishop f4, which is kind of a sideline and unusual move that usually isn't played as much, but sometimes you want to play these kind of moves to throw your opponent off. So after bishop f4, we do have c5. I like the aggressive manner here, where you do want to attack the center as much as possible, guys, especially if you're going to play with the black pieces and you want to play for something more than just a draw, and maybe even more than just being equal, is playing things like this here. Actually is breaking up the center and actually just saying, hey, I know you're going to have a center, but I'm going to break it up, and I'm going to have a center as well, playing the c5 move. And in e3, we're going to keep the tension here. A lot of times they say to take is a mistake, and if we go back and we look at d takes c5, bishop takes c5 would allow black to just develop almost with tempo, actually, and be able to move the bishop out and knight f6 and castle very quickly in that manner. So they keep the tension, and there is knight f6 here. Then after knight f6, there's knight f3, and then c takes d4, so I can develop my bishop without having to move it twice, because if I play bishop to e7, then maybe d takes c5, and then after bishop takes c5, I've just moved that bishop twice. Not that it's going to hurt my position too much, but it is something to be aware of. So after c takes d4, e takes d4, and then bishop to e7, followed by castle. Playing very simple here. We have our pawns in the center. It's okay. It's about equal. We're feeling good here with the black pieces. And then c5 from Komodo here. Very interesting. Actually just going to lock things down here and say, I'm going to play on the queen side and see what I can do here. Your pawn structure tells you where you should play on. And this is very interesting here, because usually you would see things maybe as like maybe capturing on d5 or even knight to c3 and play with the isolated pawn. Maybe follow up with bishop to d3 and aim on this side of the board, and usually play on the king side of the board. But it's very interesting how Komodo plays this. So after bishop to e7, there's c5, kind of locking it down and gonna play on the queen side of the board. Castles, and then knight to c3, we're going to develop our queen side because that's the side we're playing on. And b6 from Winter here. Guys, when you have a center or something like this, a pawn chain for that matter, you need to break it up. And you want to break it up by all means necessary, and the way to do that is by pawn breaks, which is like e5 and b6. These are the only pawn breaks you have. And e5, of course, just does not work. We have too many pieces on e5, but b6 does, which may even force or try to push for b4, which a5 could follow, and a3. And you're going to try, this is a battle about who's going to keep this pawn center, what's going to happen to it. Now after b6, there is b4, trying to keep this very solid, and if captures, we just capture back, and we have even a passed pawn at that point in game wise. So after b4, there's knight to e4. We have to play dynamic, aggressive. What would you do in these kind of positions, guys? If you go back here, do you need to play, you know, a slow, maybe a5, knight c6, which is really bad because of b5. There's moves that you can go very wrong here very quickly with the black pieces. And I do like this knight e4 move because it's very aggressive. It says, hey, you have to do something now. I'm going to challenge you, and you want to make threats, guys. The more threats you make, the better the game's going to be for you. So not all the time, but many times, guys, the more threats you make, you're going to be in the driver's seat. After knight e4, there's rook c1 to defend the knight on c3, and now we have the a5 move here. So the rook on a1 does make a difference when you play a5, because after a3, captures and captures, then we take here, the queen comes over to a1. But at the end of the day, this pawn structure is still very, very strong. So let's see what happens here, guys. As white, you could play a3. You could also play something else as well. What would you actually play from white's position here? What do you think is a move that you would play in this position as Komodo? Would you play a3 in this position? Here's the move, guys. He did not play a4 or a3. It was knight to a4. Interesting move here, playing on the queen side of the board, playing where all the action is, where I have the strongest side of attacking is on with knight a4. So playing on the queen side of the board, which is what Komodo chose. So after knight a4, we have knight to d7. And knight to d7 is a very scary move, guys. I will say this. In this position right here, I am not happy with black that much. It's hard to move. It's hard to move. If you go knight c6, b5. If you go knight a6, probably b5 anyway, maybe knight b4, but then again a3. This is hanging. This bishop looks crazy. There's a rook on the file. there are so many ways to go wrong in this position that I can see a human immediately just botching this position and it'd be over in a few moves here. But of course, we are playing engines here, and they're going to play at their very best and show us something. So after knight a4, knight to d7, not afraid of c6 at all. Well, of course, Komodo says, well, you're going to have to show me, because after bishop to b5, a takes b4, now we have c6. There it is. c6 is on the board. This knight is here. c7 is coming with the queen going to be hanging. So if something as simple as knight f6, c7, and you might as well resign. This is a family channel. Let's just get that off the board. Let's actually see it right here. Knight f6, c7. Why are we still even looking at this position here, guys? This is over. You can't do anything about it. Look at the queen side play, the monstrosity here from Komodo playing with these pieces here on the side of the board with a devastating attack. So you can't move your knight. So what do? Well, that's called an equal or stronger threat, guys. Just because I'm threatened doesn't mean I have to move it. And that's something you should take notes on. After c6, bishop to a6. Hey, if you capture mine, I'm going to capture yours, actually, is what he's saying. Equal or stronger threat. But in a way, it's actually still hanging a piece. So let's see what happens. c7 was actually the move here. And then queen to c8, we move out of the way. Watch what happens next. Bishop to c6. I feel like I am getting crushed here, guys. This is not what we hoped for out of the opening. You don't play the opening or the queen's gambit decline and then say to yourself, this is the position I wanted, right? So this is very, very interesting. And this always kind of happens when you're watching engines play. Rook to a7 here. And of course, we're going to capture on d7. Knight b6 is coming in. They're queening. This game is about to get more wild than it is right now. So hold on to your seats here. Queen takes d7, knight takes b6. Okay, queen's coming. I mean, but we have it covered, but let's see what happens. Queen to b5. He says, queen anyway. I dare you. And he does. He queens. He definitely queens here. Guys, this is crazy. There's three queens on the board right now. 3 queens on the board, and watch what happens next. Knight to c3. He doesn't even take the queen. He doesn't even take the queen. There at this very moment, there are 2 queens on the board, and both of them are hanging. Both of them are hanging. Have you ever seen such a position like this? Queen takes c3 is now on the board, so he gets rid of one of the queens here, and then pawn takes back. Now, if you stop for a second and look at this position, compensation-wise, okay, let's actually count what's on the board. We have 2 rooks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 1 or 6 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this knight's kind of loose. The king can't castle. And then we do have a passed pawn. So there's some compensation here. Now, of course, there is going to be some accuracy involved because if you botch this, it's just over. But the king can't castle. A lot of times you do want to sacrifice material to keep the king in the center. Sometimes it's not clear, just like this position. But man, black does have some very good pressure here with not allowing the king to castle. You can't go this way for obvious reasons. The rook's already moved and the queen side is blue open here. And the king is in the center, which actually, even white's up a piece, we're going to put quotation marks there. He's really not. It's actually equal until this rook gets in the game. That's very important. So after b takes c3, knight to a4, we're just going to bring the knight back to civilization here. And black says, let's get it going. Rook to c8. Defending the pawn, if you take it, we do have stuff like bishop to b4. He does take it because you really don't have many moves, guys. If you look at this, Komodo does not have many moves here, guys. I mean, the d2 square is not available. Maybe rook c2, that's kind of passive, it feels like. My rooks are about to be doubled, almost. Of course, this is hanging out, but I mean, we have just activity of the pieces. The bishop is shutting down. Bishop and queen are shutting down this diagonal. This bishop can do some things here. I mean, there is some serious compensation here for the piece. And after rook to c8, knight takes c3, and now bishop to b4, attacking the knight twice. Bishop d2 is virtually forced in this position. And now how would you increase the position or the pressure in this position, guys? You're playing with black. You want to increase the pressure. You've sacrificed a piece here. What do you actually do after bishop to d2? Black to move here, and after bishop to d2, we follow up with queen to d3. We're just going to come inside of the position just a little bit further and be very annoying here. We're going to be extremely annoying, but at the same time also attacking the c3 knight and maybe even taking on c1, threatening mate here. If the knight moves to like a3, rook takes c1, and then queen e2 mate. Oh my goodness, what is going on here? It's just crazy. Wild position, right? So knight to e5, he says, you know what? We got to get rid of this queen. The queen has to go. She has came too close into the position here. So we got to get rid of her. So after knight e5, queen takes d4. Now your knight's hanging. We got a pawn back for that compensation. Look at the bishop sweep the board here, guys. Gary Kasparov talks about that activity over material is the way you should go, or activity will be better, or activity will trump material most times. And here the activity is huge for black. I mean, active pieces, every piece that black has is on the queen side of the board attacking the king. Weird, just great chess here, right? Queen takes d4, knight f3, and queen back to d3. So he says, well, we're going back to e5. Do you want to draw? He will definitely take a draw here. Komodo's like, please, absolutely, we will take a draw. I got my pencil ready. And then queen f5, after queen f5 hitting the knight, f4. F4 is now on the board here to defend the knight. And here it's still kind of hard. I mean, you have moves like, d4 and rook d8, maybe even doubling guys. But if you're going to increase the pressure, you have to keep the threats up. You absolutely have to keep the threats up. So with that being said, how do you keep the threats up, guys? What do? You need to find something to threaten. What is that move? The move is actually d4. Keep the attack rolling here. After d4, the knight just got to move out of the way. Knight e2, and here we go. Rook takes c1, queen takes c1, and then queen over to e4. What is this, guys? Look at the threats. Every move that black made here, threat, another threat, and another one, guys. You want to keep the threats going because you're going to have good positions, and you can also, it's hard to make good moves in a bad position is what I like to tell my students all the time, but it's hard to defend also if you're being threatened so many times. So after queen e4, the knight is actually hanging with checkmate, and then he finally gets out of the way. He's like, you know what? You can have it back. That's the thing about it. If you're up material, sometimes you're going to have to give it back. Now, in this case, I mean, black's doing just fine. We take on d2 first, then we follow up with taking on e2. And now we have our piece back with some interest here. If we look at the pawn structure, actually not even just the pawn structure, just pawns period, there's 4 pawns here versus 5, where black is actually up a pawn, this being passed. We're queening on a light square with a light square bishop, and things are fine here. We do have to watch our back rank for mate. So of course, we just make some loot from the king here, king h7. H3, they kind of do the same. I mean, kind of just like, how did this happen? I mean, this is almost like a shock factor, even though engines don't have that much emotion. But here, this is like a shock factor. Like, what happened? I thought I was crushing out of the opening. And king h7, rook to c8, and then f6. We have to get rid of this knight because when they cross the line, they have to go, which is this line here. And this knight's very annoying. So, and vice versa. I mean, black has too many pieces across this line here. And it's going to be a problem eventually if we don't get rid of it. Knight to g4, he's out of the way. And here we go, series of checks and things of that sort. But queen b1, and he can just kind of get out of the way, which is exactly what happened here. Queen b1, king h2, bishop takes g4. And then we take, oh, actually took on e5, but taking is a possibility. It absolutely is a possibility, but it is just kind of losing in every way, shape, and form. But after queen takes d4, he has e5. e5 with bishop f5 to follow, and also the rook's hanging, guys. You take mine, I take yours. These engines are, of course, all knowing and all powerful. And after pawn takes, we take the rook, you take the rook, and what a turn of events. This started as white crushing out of the opening. Any human probably would have failed to convert or failed to defend this. But now look at this position, guys. I mean, he's up a full piece now. Winter is winning. Now let's do some technical things here. We move some pieces around a little bit. There's a check. Our idea here, guys, is to get the bishop and queen in the nice harmony while watching these 2 pawns at the same time and advancing ours at the same time. So here we go. Put the bishop in the center of the board, even covering checks if we need to, and be able to push this pawn. Okay, so after bishop to d5, h4, and queen to e4, threatening, or not really threatening mate, but keeping an eye here, keeping an eye here, keeping an eye here. Like queen, central queens are always great, right, guys? So let's fast forward here. Queen f2, the pawn is hanging, we capture it, and we make some more moves here for black, as we just see the queen's just going on a rampage here and just snapping the pawns. This is absolutely lost, guys. So let's actually see the technique in the end. Queen to g4, taking on h5. Or also even bishop to d5, but you could just take the pawn too. Very, very simple here, guys. Very simple. Bishop rerouted to the best square, central pieces here. Oh my goodness, this is over here, guys. This is a family channel. I'm sorry you have to see this. F4 check, and the king now has to step off, and the rest is history. The rest is just light work here, guys. Let's see how we finished it. And this is, of course, look how accurate this is. G5, engine move, right? G5, and then queen d4 to cut the board off here. and then get the king in just a little bit closer. You don't have to go for this extra queen like we usually would, especially if you're playing bullet chess or something. But queen to king to g7, we're going to close in the box a little bit, close it some more. He has to go back, and then king here. Beautiful technique, forcing the checkmate on the next move. And after king f8, queen d8, and Winter is the one that ends up checkmating Komodo in this game, guys. Beautiful game. Looks like it's actually reversed here, but actually Winter's playing with the black pieces and ends up checkmating here on the f8 square. What a game by two super strong engines. They always show you how to attack and beautiful ways to play, how to take initiative, what you should do with activity when you're down material and stuff like that, guys. I hope you enjoyed this game. I'm National Master James Canty III with Chess.com, and this was Game of the Day, and I'll see you guys on the next video.